Welcome to Define You Radio. Class is in session with your host, the Southern Belle of Bold, Valencia Griffin-Wallace. Are you ready to unapologetically build your confidence, achieve goals, and design a life worth living? Learn the life lessons and strategies to define your life, money, and business. Pens and papers ready? Class is now in session.
Well, hello, and welcome to Define You Radio. Classes in session, where you get the tips, strategies, and life lessons from usually it's queens. But tonight we have a king on who has defined his life, and I am so excited. So let me just kind of go with the flow, guys. Y'all know normally I kind of say the same thing. Tonight's a little different show. So in case this is your first time listening, I am your host, the Southern Belle of Bold, Valencia Griffin-Wallace. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much, and this is definitely the right show. If you have any questions or comments, you could go ahead and inbox Define You Radio on Facebook, where you should be following us anyway for updates and more. Otherwise, you miss all the goodies. We are on countdown mode for Define You Live, taking place in Houston, Texas, November 11th. Make sure you guys get your tickets while they're hot. So this month's series, you guys know last month we talked about, domestic violence and all of those things. But this month, October is the beginning of fall, I guess. And this month, we're talking about being intentional and on purpose, just like the seasons. I know a lot of us are currently in a season in our life right now where we're feeling certain changes going on. And so I felt like this was the perfect show with the message that's going to be delivered, no less, by a king. So I'm extremely excited. And I know you guys are tired of hearing my voice, but I love you anyway. So we're discussing empowering the rejected with Dr. M Stanley Butler. Dr. Stanley, Dr. Butler. For some reason, I keep wanting to say Dr. Stanley. Dr. Butler, welcome to Define You Radio.
Thank you, Valencia. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. So why don't you go and Dr. Stanley, Dr. Butler. I'm going to get it, I promise.
No
yay is like one of my favorite words. It is, so I will periodically say that. So just to kind of warn you ahead of why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about you? You are such a fascinating person to me. I read your bio.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I'm an author, teacher, and conference speaker. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I currently live in Maryland, so I'm in the DMV area. I'm an entrepreneur by heart, and I have a nonprofit organization called Striving Toward Excellence in Public Service. There's a shameless plug for that. I specialize in developing nonprofits and nonprofit leaders, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Well, I'm excited. I'm really excited. So, and no, definitely I want you to give all your information because you never know who's listening. And I love that you work with nonprofits and nonprofit leaders. Mm-hmm. So I love that. And your organization is called
Striving Toward Excellence in Public Service.
Steps.
Correct.
Yes. I love that. I was like, okay, let me see what this is about. So, in the book, because tonight's show kind of goes in line with your book almost. So, if you could go ahead and give the audience the name of the book real quick, so they could get to Googling while they're listening.
Sure. It's Sometimes Man's Rejection is God's Protection.
Mm. How did the title come to you?
Pardon me?
How did the title of the book come to you?
The title of the book came to me. I was actually writing. I was writing about rejection in general, and as I was going through the different types of rejection that people experience within their lives, when I look at it from a Christian perspective, the realization really came to me that overall, the different experiences that God's people go through, God shows His power to turn each and every one of those situations around so that they work toward their good. And so, in effect, He's basically protecting them from the intent of their enemies.
That's almost what I would like what I call here a mic drop moment. And I love that you address this in the book, because a lot of times I think no one wants to say, I feel rejected.
Right.
Like, we may think it, we may whisper about it, we may suffer with those feelings, but no one really says it out loud, which is one of the reasons why it's something hard to address. So when we think about being rejected by man, how are people rejected, or what's some examples you can give that the audience can relate to as far as that rejection?
Well, what I learned personally is that anyone could experience rejection, every day of their lives. And undoubtedly, most people experience rejection actually more than they realize. It's only when rejection impacts us that we even care that we're being rejected. So generally, the awareness that somebody's rejecting you comes when you're able to place that person within one of three categories. When it's somebody that you love, somebody that you aspire to, or someone who's in authority over you. These people are the people I refer to them as our empowered rejectors. It's these individuals who have the ability they can touch our heart, they can touch our lives, and whether they intend to or not, they can distract us from our God-ordained purpose. So with that in mind, rejection becomes a tool of the enemy that's really specifically crafted to break our focus and leave us sorting through all types of emotions and sometimes unnecessary realities. Some people are rejected by parents, and you got some who are rejected by spouses, their employers. It really becomes very individual as far as how rejection is impacted or implanted within our lives. We even have some people who become victims of self-rejection. Because rejection is an equal opportunity offender. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how attractive you think you are or how accomplished you are. There's always going to be somebody who feels that, you're just not their cup of tea. And so everyone experiences rejection. The real issue is, or whether you consider it an issue or not, most people don't really realize it because if you don't care about the person who's rejecting you, you don't even realize you're being rejected. So with that being said, rejection is generally an action that's meant to communicate, whether verbally or non-verbally, that you're just not good enough. You're not good enough to marry. You're not good enough to promote. Not good enough to spend time with or invest time and resources into. So it's these people, the people that we love, the ones that we inspire to, and those who are in authority over us. These are the people that we've empowered basically to reject us, and they become the perfect vessels through which our enemy is able to launch attacks against us.
Wow. You guys know it is class is in session. That's why it's the tagline for the show. I hope you guys are taking notes. And if you are on the Facebook page, please put the notes there that you're getting from this. Dr. Butler is dropping so much knowledge. I'm over here taking notes also. So you hit so many points. And I kind of want to hit on when you talk about the love aspect of rejection, when you talked about the three types of people that reject us or that we empower to reject us, and you said, people we love. I believe that love can extend to friendships also. Am I right?
That's correct.
And so, one of the things that I see, and I'm sure the listeners can agree, that in this day and time when we put, we love our friends, we love our connections, and then you'll turn around and find out, that person, I don't want to say doesn't love you back, but they, I do believe that, they become a tool, like you said, a tool from the enemy. I don't know if it's an on purpose thing, but I've been made aware of a lot of situations where, those friendships end because of people being used. I don't know how else to say it, Dr. Butler.
That's correct.
So, was there ever a point in your life where you felt rejected, or what's like the memory that comes to your mind when I say, when have you felt rejected?
Well, a time that initially really comes to mind is, ironically, it has to do with a good friend, a long time friend. And I'm going to take the long way around the bush to get to this one. But over the years, I've had prophets and apostles who prophesied to me regarding books that I would write. And I remember there was a particular apostle that prophesied to me, and he told me that I would write 3 books. And one of those books would be a book about rejection, and that people would be delivered as they read the book. And at the time when that prophecy was going forth, I thought, okay, well, he's missing the mark, because that really doesn't have anything to do with me. But over time, that prophecy kept persisting, because I had other prophets and things that would come forward, and they would always hit on that rejection thing. You're going to write a book about rejection. I had a spiritual mentor, and she taught me that when someone prophesies something to you or issues a prophecy about you, if it doesn't resonate within your spirit, then just place it on the shelf and let time handle it. Because if it's a true word, it'll come to pass, and you don't have to work it. So the whole writing a book about rejection took its place right on the shelf, because I just didn't feel like it had anything to do with me. However, time and circumstance eventually began to work that prophecy within me. And when I wrote my book, Sometimes Man's Rejection is God's Protection, I referenced numerous examples and stories of rejection that were shared with me from friends and family and different associates. There's a chapter in my book called Investment, and that's actually the first chapter that I wrote in the book. And when I was writing it, I didn't write from the perspective that I was writing the book. Because I'm just a writer, when I feel different things, I just have a tendency to just write. And at this particular time in my life, it was a low point in my life. And so I was just writing. And it really had to do with a friend of mine and this particular period of my life that I was going through. And this particular friend of mine was someone that I was very close to for many years. We grew up together. We talked on the phone almost daily. We were just a great part of each other's lives and daily interactions. I just invested a lot of my time and energy in supporting her and this relationship that we had. However, when I was going through a low point in my life, I came to a realization that even though I was considered a resource to a lot of different people, at that point in my life, I had nobody who was a resource to me, up to and including this individual that I made myself available to on a daily basis, no one was available to provide any type of support for me. And when we invest our time and our energy and our emotions, we do so with the intent or the expectation that we're going to get a return on that investment.
Right.
Whether it's a friendship or an intimate relationship, that's just the logical expectation. And in my opinion, my philosophy about all relationships is that relationships are maintained because they provide some sort of need that we have within our lives. So, I have some people that, if I'm down, I call them, and I know that, they're going to joke around and they're going to bring me up. If I need somebody that I can, I have some people I can talk to about spiritual matters, and we can go back and forth on that. It's very rare that you find a single person who has everything that you need, where you can talk to them about all areas of your life, whether general or personal. But whatever that relationship is, the time and the resources that you put into that relationship, you expect to get a return on that investment.
Mm-hmm.
What I came to realize in this particular situation was that even though I put all this time, more than 20 years, into this, I came to realize there was no return on that investment, and that the value that I placed upon that relationship really was just a value that was just mine alone, and it caused me to have to rethink the relationship and really restructure what place that relationship held within my life.
Wow. I love that you hit home on so many points, because that is something that I tell people. Once someone kind of shows you who they are or what they're about, you don't necessarily have to cut them off, but then you put them in a certain place. Like, what category they belong. I mean, some people you do have to cut off, I do believe, but others you just know what category to put them in.
Right.
So, did you continue the friendship?
Yes.
Okay.
We're still friends.
But you just know.
Yeah, I know. I feel that with every relationship that you have, you need to take the time to get to know the character of the person. The areas in which they excel. What their strengths and weaknesses are. In what areas they're going to be able to give to you, and other areas in which they can only receive. And and sometimes it's a learning process. Sometimes we place people in categories or in positions within our lives that they don't have the capacity to support, and so we end up being disappointed. And initially, we become upset with that individual, but we have to take responsibility because relationships are two-way streets. You invest in them with the anticipation that you're going to get something back out of it. It's selfish as it may seem, but that's the reality. And you really have to be truthful and honest with yourself as to whether or not the person that you're investing a lot of time into, whether or not they have the capacity to give anything back. And if they're not able to give anything back, then it just may be necessary to seek out someone else, or pray to God will send you someone else who can fill the gap that you have. If you don't have the spiritual maturity to allow God to fill in that gap himself, then sometimes God will send someone in the natural who can fill in that gap and help us to walk through different processes until we're in that place of maturity where it doesn't impact us emotionally like it has in the past.
Understood. And I received that. I know this year, and I'm all about being intentional. And I said, one of the things that I realized in life. In life you're almost taught to be kind of general with your prayers, or just, pray for, Lord, help me get this house, or Lord, help me pay these bills, or those types of things. We're really not, at least I wasn't really taught that you need to pray for relationships. So this year, I really got intentional about praying for those, what I call God-sized connections, and to bring those people in my life to stand in that gap when my legs got weak.
Right.
So it's almost about to turn into church, guys. Okay. So, but they, if anyone follows me on Facebook, they always know I always talk about faith and Queens and us empowering each other, and, really just finding those God-sized connections, but being intentional about it. Because I do believe if you don't pray for, especially in that area of who you're connecting to with, on your way to destiny or on your way to purpose, then to me that leaves room open for the enemy. Now, not saying that you can block all of it, but I believe that a certain level of discernment comes with that. So I just had to throw my 2 cents in.
We also have to come to the realization that not every good thing is a God thing. And oftentimes what we can do is, especially as God begins to promote us and we go from level to level, the reality is that as we go higher, the number of people who are connected to us generally decreases, because not everyone is prepared to experience the warfare and or the blessings that are associated with the promotion. And so it's not uncommon that, men and women of God, as they're promoted, as they go higher and higher, the number of people that are associated with them begins to decrease. And unfortunately, some people begin to experience loneliness because they come to a realization that in the natural there are so few people who understand where they are in life. And so there's always that temptation to connect with someone who on the surface seems like a good person. And they may generally be a good person, but they're not necessarily the person that God would have you connected to, because they're not a divine connection. You have me taking notes. My pen is about to run out tonight. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this show myself. So you hit so many points, especially when you talk about as you increase, how sometimes you get lonely. I've felt that. I'm not going to lie. You guys know I do my hashtag real talk. I have felt that loneliness because I was going, and still, not the loneliness part, but still, going in new directions. And it's bringing me into different connections where I am unfamiliar. But in order to go where you're supposed to go, you have to get in that unfamiliar territory. So that's making me have less in common with old connections, to where you really, things are really uncovered, and I always say it's always pruning season. In order to grow, you do have to prune. Right. So you hit home, I know, with me, and I know a lot of people feel that that the people they're currently connected to or sources that they relied on, as they grow, those things seem to change or to decrease, and it can be a very lonely space. And I do believe that's why a lot of people give up on their way to purpose. Your thoughts? That's exactly true. The way that I usually think about it is long days and lonely nights, because everything gets worse in the middle of the night. Even the common cold gets worse. You feel worse at night than you do during the day. And you can, as a believer, I believe that we oftentimes enter into different phases of our lives, and in which we're working and we're striving so hard to walk in the purpose that God has outlined for us. That as He shines that light, we're walking therein, and we're working according to what He has revealed to us is our destiny. And that in itself can become tiring. And then you have these periods where the loneliness sets in, because sometimes some situations are really crafted specifically for you. And those places where God might have you to rest while you're preparing to go to the next level may not be a place that's comfortable for the people who feel like they're attached to you, or feel like they should be going with you because for whatever reason they may have been attached to you or known you for years, and you have a good friendship or a relationship. They may not necessarily understand that relationship is not fitting for where it is that God wants to take you. And I think it really goes back to that whole principle that not every good thing is a God thing. And there might be some places where God has designed for that loneliness to be there, because that loneliness becomes the catalyst for you to, really dig in to establish a deeper, intimate relationship with Him.
You are talking to me tonight. I told a friend of mine a couple of hours ago, I said, this show is for me. And I know, like, normally, but I feel like, God directs certain things, and we just have to pay attention. And so you are speaking to, and anyone that knows me knows I'm like 100% honest, because I want people to learn along the way. And I can't, they can't learn along the way if I'm not being honest.
Right.
But this season in my life of growth, I am tirelessly working, because I've gotten glimpses of where I'm going. And so as I tirelessly work, because one of the things I say, faith without works is dead. So I'm putting in the work behind my faith, and it is tiring at times, and it is lonely at times. And my work ethic has been in existence long before I realized I even had a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And so when I realized that I had a relationship with Him and started working on building that relationship and finding out who Valencia is in Him, you add that work ethic to that vision, I'm just going in. So, definitely feeling that loneliness at times, which I do believe, is a season in itself almost. That a lot, like I said earlier, a lot of people don't make it through that.
Right.
So,
right.
I might have should have made this a 2-hour special, but so Dr. Butler, I could recognize, for the most part, I think, rejection. But a lot of people can't. They don't recognize it for what it is. How can we recognize that as a tool of the enemy? Because a lot of people won't put 2 and 2 together like that.
Well, anything that causes you to be so distraught that it becomes all-encompassing, that's a tool by design. It's a distraction that's been especially and specifically formed within your life. The word says, you'll keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you. And he does that because we continually trust in him. When your circumstance stops you from continually trusting in God, that's a tool of the enemy. You know, and the reality is that when I look at myself, what I see and how I see it is greatly influenced by how effective my enemy's warfare has been against me. And so when rejection makes me shift from what God thinks about me to what others think, that rejection is a tool of the enemy.
I need you to hit that point one more time for me. Like, just kind of go back to where you said, just repeat that one more time for me, because I feel like somebody needs to hear that part again.
Okay. We recognize that rejection as a tool when it takes a part, when it integrates itself into our lives and it becomes all-encompassing. When all we can see is the rejection that's going on, when we have transitioned to a place where we're seeking out affirmation, the affirmation of others, or we're looking for somebody to confirm who we are, whether it's within our spiritual calling or who we are as a professional, any aspect of who we are, if we're looking for somebody else to confirm that or affirm that, that becomes a place where the enemy can set up shop. And so as mature Christians, we come to realize that the higher we go, the greater the warfare is. And that warfare, you can determine how effective that warfare is by how it causes us to look at ourselves. The way that we press on into victory is when we can look at ourselves and we see ourselves the way that God sees us. Not necessarily what the facts say, but according to what the truth says. When we can see ourselves according to what our God-ordained destiny is, that's when we begin to walk in the true victory. So if the enemy can put me in a position where I'm looking at myself through that rejection rather than through the eyes of God, then I am entrenched in a situation in which the enemy is launching rejection as a weapon and as a tool against me.
You hit it. You definitely hit it with that. And one of the things I just put on the show page was the higher you go, the greater the warfare. And I did a video the other day, and I was saying something about, the reason why I work out and do, kind of making a joke and doing kickboxing, which I actually do. And the reason why I do that and work on my mental toughness, because I know that I have to be spiritually, physically, and emotionally strong for this battle. And it makes, and other people listening may not understand that, but it makes sense to me that as who I am and where I'm going, I have to be spiritually strong, number one. So I'm not questioning things because, this fight, I don't know how else to phrase it. It gets hard, and it is a test. And when you're weak, or there's a little slight opening, the enemy will come in and attack you and kick you while you're already down.
Right.
So, what would you advise somebody, or how can we stay strong when we are feeling attacked, when we are feeling like the enemy is coming for us, so to speak?
Well, you never heard about the enemy going into the Holy of Holies. So my thought is your greatest strength is within your intimacy with God. And so part of the answer is knowing God and allowing God to know you. Now, God knows everything there is about us, and we should be spending our lives trying to know everything that we could possibly know about him, and establish a relationship that's really geared toward consistent intimacy with him. Once we do that, I mean, really it all rests on our ability to keep our mind stayed on him. So, I mean, you may not be walking around with your hands lifted all the time, but, you know, when we get to the place of Christian maturity, that really establishes us as a true worshiper, in that our worship is our lifestyle, then we begin to become masters of the art of keeping our mind stayed on him. When our focus remains steadfast on him and not on what he can do for us, but just on who he is, then he's bigger than anything or person or circumstance within our lives. But when we allow ourselves to become distracted, then the things, people, and problems within our lives, they become bigger than God, and we become playthings in the enemy's camp.
Yes, indeed. Today was like one of those days. Like I mentioned to you earlier, and several people know, my son is in the military and he's in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. And having not heard from him, you know, had me in this emotional space. So, and I say that to say that today was a day of distractions, to where I felt emotionally and spiritually out of pocket. Mm-hmm. So things that normally I could brush off, shut down, or walk away from really got under my skin today. And I almost always, almost let G-Baby out. And that's what I call the me I used to be. Just being honest, that's what I call the me I used to be, because that's how vulnerable I felt today. And it's like everything, like I saw everything that, like I said, normally would not have bothered me, and I knew where it came from, and I was so close to responding to something that almost had nothing to do with me, and I said, "Okay, Valencia, breathe, just breathe through it." And what happened, I said, I always tell people God sends me signs I can't ignore. I just so happened to see a post of a friend of mine on Instagram, and it said like, "Get focused," or "I need you focused," or something like that, God. And I said, "Okay, Lord." So I shut everything down, and about 10 minutes later, my son called. Mm. And that's one of those moments I have to say, lesson learned, Lord.
Right.
And I wonder, had I ignored the obedience of me getting outside of self, because that's the thing that I have to work towards, getting outside of that old self as I'm a new person and still steadily maturing. So that was a battle. That was a battle between the old me and the new me. And I kid you not, like I'm gonna have to post it on Facebook, because it said exactly what I needed to see at that moment, because I knew it was distractions from the enemy. I recognized it for what it was, but I wasn't strong enough to focus myself. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that message, I shut everything down, and I just had to walk away and just kind of catch myself. And my son called, and literally I had like tears. So that's a hashtag real talk moment, guys. So right. Obedience, obedience is everything. It's everything, and it's a hard thing for some people. It's a hard thing for me, but I do it anyway. We always talk about that do it anyway when it comes to goals and everything else. Somebody needs to make a shirt, obedience, do it anyway. Because my old self today almost won. But that really shows that we have to be aware of those attacks and aware of, just breathe through it. I don't know what else to say except just breathe through it and let God work. And me showing my obedience, it felt like my birthday to hear my son's voice. Because if y'all know me, y'all know that's my only child. And I was in my feelings. So I'm sorry, I just had to share that, because that was like a perfect example, because the enemy had an opening. He had an opening, had me distracted to where I was, if I was a cartoon, it would have been smoke coming out my ears. That's how distracted I was today with stuff that normally doesn't bother me. So I just had to drop the mic on that one, Dr. Butler. Now, one of the things that you talk about is how to recognize rejection as a tool of the enemy. That's not what I wanted to talk about. Your quote, your ability to fulfill purpose in the face of those who reject you lay in your willingness to allow the momentum of your enemy's assault to propel you right into your destiny. Right. Let's talk about that.
Okay, that comes with trusting God. When we look at Jesus, the Word lets us know that Jesus, he's the Lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world. And he was willing to die, but, he wasn't suicidal. He was born to die. And that was so because there was no one else who was fit to pay the sin debt. But even though that was his purpose, he didn't go storming Pilate's halls. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't march up to Calvary. His ability to fulfill purpose in the face of those who rejected him lay in his willingness to allow the momentum of his enemy's assault to propel him into his destiny. The princes of the world, of this world, if they'd have known the plan of God, they never would have crucified Jesus. He came to his own, and his own rejected him. So the enemy sought to use that circumstance to slay him and to snuff out his work and his purpose. But all Jesus had to do was trust in the Father and rest in that purpose. One of my favorite scriptures says, "I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil to give you an expected end." That lets us know that our destiny it resides within the mind of God. So even though Lucifer is the cleverest of God's creation, he's no match for the breadth and the reach of the Holy Ghost. So when we have the boldness to accept the importance of our purpose within God's plan, and yet have enough humility to realize and proclaim that we're nothing without him, we become targets. Because it's at that point that God knows that he can trust us to promote us and make us great before men. And when we learn to take all of this in stride, whether it's rejection or any other spiritual attack that the enemy would bring against us, we take it all in stride and not stress about it. That's when we exercise and demonstrate that we're placing our trust in God, not only in who he is, but in the purpose that he's put within us. And that's when we realize that we are one who possesses the mind that's being kept in perfect peace. And we remain open to being ushered into our destiny, even if that destiny is taking us in a vehicle that's uncomfortable or painful, whatever that circumstance is, that when we trust God enough that we can rest in it, then those circumstances that the enemy has conjured up with the intention of destroying us, those are the very tools that God will use to thrust us into our destiny and show forth our purpose within the world.
You hit the nail on the head. I love that. And a question came to my mind. When did you have that? I call it like a defining moment, or did you just grow into being I guess you would call it spiritually mature as you are? Did you have like a aha moment, like, okay, Lord, I see it, I recognize it? Or was that a growth? Did you grow into that discernment? I think that's the question.
It really comes down to process. You can go to any church during a testimony service, and you can hear a dozen people get up, and and after they give honor to God, they begin to tell you the different situations and circumstances that they're going through presently in their life. We may not all have the same circumstances. We may not all have the same background or the same testimony. But one thing we do have in common is that God uses process to mature us. And my process may not be your process, because generally those processes that we have to go through, some of them are influenced by our personal decisions and choices that we make. And God is allowing those decisions, even if they're decisions that we're making that are basically acts of disobedience, He's able to turn those situations around so that they mature us and they refine us, so that even though we come into the world as a square, our process begins to shave away those edges so that we become able to fit into those round holes that we need to be in, so that we can go forward in the earth and really do whatever it is that God has for us individually to do.
I think with me, it was a process that happened like a hurricane. I was prepared, then it hit. I wasn't ready. Life went back to normal. Right. And I'm in the South. I'm in Louisiana. So, it's hurricane season. And when it's hurricane season, there's a process with it. When, the Gulf, the categories, what to expect. You prepare for it. You get your water and whatever else that we do to get prepared for hurricane. The hurricane hit, it might be, underestimated or overestimated, but afterwards life kind of goes back to normal. Until finally, instead of always having to get ready for the hurricane and letting it pass, you learn your lesson.
Right.
If that makes sense. I'm a Louisiana girl, so hurricanes and hurricane season is nothing new until Katrina happened. And when Katrina happened, I actually had damage. And when Brita happened a week later, I actually lost my house. So that hurricane season, even though I've experienced them a whole lot in life, that hurricane season changed the rest of the hurricane seasons for me. And so I say that to say, I kept seeing the signs of me needing to turn my life around. And I would, and then I would go back. And I would, and then I would go back. And until finally, that hurricane season, that unforgettable Katrina, Rita in my personal life happened. And there was no going back. And I hope somebody got that in what I was saying, because all the things that happened that should have made me stay on course and change my life, losing my mom, having my son, that changed me for a little bit. A lot of things happened. I kept hitting that brick wall, and I saw the signs, and I felt God pulling me, but I just wasn't ready for long term. I could, okay, Lord, we could do this for a little bit, but then I got to go back to my old life. And it kept happening like that until, something happened in my personal life that really kind of shook my quote unquote foundation. Then there was no turning back. It's either this way or that way. The choice is yours. So, my spiritual maturity, which is definitely still going on, definitely was a process of fighting obedience. So wow, that time goes by fast. We have like 10 minutes left. That is crazy. I wanted to hit on something else when we one of my questions was, why do you think people associate greatness with numbers?
Okay. All right. There are a lot of small ministries.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of small ministries, and para-ministries, and I've worked with a lot of small ministries, and I've worked with ministries that barely make it from week to week and barely see any growth at all. And they work hard. They work hard to spread the gospel and serve people, and they work hard to effect change within their communities. And oftentimes, those small ministries aspire to be like renowned ministries or the mega ministries. Some even go as far as to come under the covering of mega ministries, and they sow of their resources and their time into those large ministries with the faith that what's on that larger ministry is going to flow down, and eventually their small ministry is going to mirror that larger ministry. And what they seem to, with the small ministries and the ministers seem to fail to realize is that, not all that glitters is gold. And they would actually be better served if they would seek out God's purpose for their lives and their work individually, rather than trying to be the next Potter's house. They may never be on the level of a Potter's house, and they may never have the following of Joyce Meyer, but it doesn't diminish their work or their purpose. In God's eyes, we're all great because we all came into this world with a piece of God's purpose invested within us. And, our job is to be faithful to what we know about God and faithful to God and demonstrate that through our obedience. And in so doing, we fulfill our purpose. And when we fulfill our purpose, then God is glorified within the earth. So anybody who's listening to this call may one day have a ministry that reaches millions and saves hundreds of thousands. But if they don't, that's okay, because their ministry might only reach that one person whose purpose is to reach a million. So as long as, we're faithful to our individual purpose, then God is glorified.
There's a Tupac quote or something he said on one of this documentary or something I was watching, and he said Tupac said that he may not, or something like, we may not be the spark, we may be the person that inspires the spark to change the world. So basically what you just said, and I think a lot of people don't realize that if you just change one person, like, you may not be that person to necessarily change the world by your direct touch, your indirect touch. You may, somebody spoke into my life at some point in time that it was a spark that eventually helped to light the fire and to where I've reached other people. And I hope, someone listening to me, or that's in, quote unquote, inspired by me, go out and inspire 10 times more, double that. And I can't remember, and I'm not good exactly with names from the Bible. Like, I know the stories, but sometimes the names get confused. But I want to say Elijah, but I may be wrong. When he was dying, and somebody asked for like a double portion of his blessing, and You know what I'm talking about?
Right. Elijah
I just
and
was
Elisha.
listening. Okay, see, I was right. And so it was just to pass that on for that person that you pass whatever on to do double what you do to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
We can't always be like it needs to be me. It needs to be me. No, you may be that person. I want anyone who listens to me to please outdo me. Please outdo me. Outreach me. Because there's a whole lot of people in this world that needs something. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. My one of my spiritual mentors, she used to always teach us that I know that I've done my job when you surpass me.
Mm.
And as spiritual leaders, that really should be our goal, is to, we don't want to collect people and hold them for the next 40 years. We should be bringing people in, teaching them so that they can go out and replicate themselves.
Yes. Dr. Butler, do you think you are changing the world?
I do. I actually do think I'm changing the world. I've gotten emails from people who've read my book, and they share with me what they've gone through and how the book speaks to them. But outside of that, I see myself as a piece of the whole. I'm one of many within the plan of God. So my prayer is consistently that I would be effective. Effective in business, in ministry, in my walk. When I mean effective, I'm talking about a person who stays in my lane. I'm in my spot, and I'm doing what I've been created to do.
Amen. How can the audience get in touch with you? What's your website, your social media handles? How can they definitely get the book, which I will be getting tonight because I must read it. It'll be my book of the month. So why don't you go ahead and pass your information along so the audience can reach out and connect with you?
Okay. My websites are www.mstanleybutler.com, and my book is available on my site as well as Amazon and Barnes & Noble. My social media links, which are Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, all of them have the same handle, M. Stanley Butler. Oh, and my nonprofit is stepsofexcellence.org. So, I invite the audience to join my mailing list and, get my newsletter.
You guys, all that information will be posted on Define You Radio's Facebook page. Sign up for the newsletter. Get the book. Y'all know I rarely say that, but somebody listening right now, including me, definitely needs this book and to receive what it's saying, because if you thought it was going to be easy getting to purpose, somebody told you wrong.
Oh, that's right.
So somebody told you wrong. We talk about putting on the armor of God. Some days you might need to put on 2, 3 and a half. This, a lot of people don't make it, but I do believe the ones that hear this message is for you. So I definitely encourage you to connect with Dr. Butler, get his book, and let me know your thoughts on tonight's show. You could let me know on Define You Radio's Facebook page. You could inbox me on Facebook. Also, you guys know I will respond, but make sure, more importantly, get the book and connect with Dr. Butler. So with that being said, Dr. Butler, welcome to the Define You Radio show family.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me to be here.
You have truly touched my life tonight and gave me some much needed soul food. much needed soul food and confirmation on this journey of mine. So I definitely look forward to staying connected with you And just thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate everything that you said tonight.
Thank you.
So with that being said, guys, kings and queens, pens and papers down. Class is officially over. Make sure you join us next week, same time, same place. Have a great week. And remember, only you can define you. And get the book. The website will be posted. See you guys soon.
Thanks for listening to Define You Radio. Class is in session. Connect with the show at www.defineyouradio.com. Pens and papers down. Class is over.
Napa know-how. The Napa guy knows not to judge a man by his car's multicolored paint job or absence of modern gadgetry. Who cares if it's technically old enough to vote and the windows are powered by the strength of your left arm? Your monthly payment is zero, and it'll stay that way. Because with over 500,000 parts and a little Napa know-how, you can keep anything on the road. She may not be pretty, but she's all yours. That's Napa know-how. Napa know-how.